Hey folks, it's Robert for time for a spot of racing with Slicks, a 1992 release by Codemasters developed by Digital Design, the duo of Ash Rutledge and Dave Saunders, who are responsible for quite a lot of great little games on the C64. In fact, if you remember Kamikaze, which I did a look at a few months ago, that was another one of their games. So Slicks is actually one of a bit of a rare breed on the C64. Overhead scrolling racing games. Most racing games on the 64 tend to be either your overhead super sprint style races, single screen static track and little cars, or you're behind the third person behind the vehicle, races in the vein of pole position or Continental Circus, or first person simulations like Grand Prix Circuit or Ferrari Formula 1. Slicks, as I said, is a rare breed, is an overhead scrolling racer. I think Supercars might be one of the only other ones I can think of. So let's dive in. For a fairly late budget game, this was a bit of a hard find to actually get a hold of, but I haven't regretted one bit. So each race, there's 6 circuits, all based on real courses that were driven in F1 at the time. So go in for your first round. First part of each race is a single qualifying lap, in which you just set your time. And controls are pretty straightforward, coming from the super sprint school of things. Accelerate to fire to accelerate, left and right to turn, which I think works really well. They're very tight and very responsive, and they give you that right feel that you'd expect when you're trying to race a twitchy high-performance race car. Along the bottom there, you've got the status panel, which has your lap time and best lap, graphic representation of what car you're driving, and your laps are on top of that, and then your speed on the right. Now we've got our grip positions, and this is where the really unique thing about Slicks comes into play. Before every race, you have the opportunity to challenge one of your rival drivers, or they can challenge you. In this case, I'm free to challenge a driver. And what happens is I need to beat them in the race. If I beat them, I take their car. And if someone challenges me and they beat me, they take my car. So it adds this sort of challenge to the game in that while you want to aim to get first, there's enough of a power gap between the vehicles that really you just care about your local opponent. In this case, the orange car there, which is representing the Lotus. I don't know why they didn't use yellow there. So all we have to do so it's not really about winning the race. Well, it is, but with the lower end cars, it's not very easy. So it's really about just coming through the race and trying to hold on to that position. One thing I like is it is about, you can't just hold the accelerator button down. You do have to let go, you do have to brake, you do have to slow down to take these corners occasionally, which adds to this feeling that, there's a bit of a good model for the racing underneath. And of course, you have to be careful, unlike most games. Whilst you can drive over, the sides of the road without much penalty, if you hit the walls, you are out of that race, which makes it very tense, especially when someone's challenging you and you need to, get to the finish line ahead of them or lose your vehicle. So like with any good racing game, it is really about getting to grips with your racing line and being able to, control your car nicely. Because when you're trying to overtake someone, it's about using your cornering. Whereas if you're defending, it's really about using your speed, because it'll usually be a slower driver. So in this case, I'm doing okay. I'm in 4th. Famous last words. As what's happened is I've just crashed out, and that ends my run for this race. What it also means is now I stay where I am. So let's move on to the next race, which is Monaco. And, well, they do a good job of representing Monaco from an overhead perspective here. So let's try not to mess this up. Now, if I'm going to talk about some flaws, the first one really is the fact there's only six circuits. And I guess that really is just because of the fact that it was a 1992 release on a cassette. And by that stage, especially remember, it was a budget release, not a full price game. So the result of that is, dev budget really wasn't that high. Alright, just mess that up. If you do mess up qualifying, you end up starting 6th on the grid, as you can see. And what that means is I've been challenged, so I can't mess this up. Otherwise, I'll be bumped down. So, pressure's on. I now have to stay ahead of the Ferrari in 5th. So, let's go. Let's hope I don't mess this up. But yeah, I mean, with 6 circuits, there's enough for a little play, but sometimes it feels like... So one of the things that happens is when you actually complete the season, you can start a new season and you keep in the team that you were in at the end of the previous one. But the downside is, it means that there's not enough opportunity to advance. You know, I mean, so in some regards, you know, it feels like you have to play many races before you can actually try to, you know, try and win the championship. And I feel that, you know, perhaps that takes a little too much time to do. You know, when you want a quick race, you know, you can play this full game, you know, probably about 15 minutes, but to have to go back and loop just feels a little unbalanced. But the rest of it is fine. You know, the graphics are great. You know, the scrolling, while it's a little jerky when there's multiple cars on the track, is, you know, the graphics are nice and colourful, and they really do use the sprites well. You know, for these cars with as little resolution as you have at this point, they do it well. Ah, close. There's only 2 more laps to go. And yeah, the sound is pretty basic engine noises and spot effects. You know, can't really complain there. The tile tune is rather nice. The multi-load isn't too bad. Basically, it loads 3 tracks in at a time. So you run your first 3, then it loads the next 3 in, and then you complete the season, you rewind the tape. Other than that, you just have to, you know, you just have those options. When you play, the other thing I should talk about is 2-player mode. In 2-player mode, it's similar to Micro Machines. You basically pick a circuit, you're both racing in identical cars, and the goal is to basically scroll your opponent off the screen as many times as possible in order to get them, you know, when you scroll them off the screen, you get a point. And the idea is basically to maximize your points by scrolling your opponent off the screen the most. Okay, next circuit. But because I win the challenge, I keep my car. So now, thankfully, Monza is a little easier. 2, 3. One thing I like is that playing, you know, for example, Monza through many other racing games over the years, the sort of, you know, the tricks to get the right line do feel appropriate here, and that's a really good case of solid design. Yeah, it's something I really appreciate the work that's gone into it. Ah, I've been challenged again. Yeah, that gets annoying after a while. Especially when it meant I could have had a go at trying to take the computer. Oh well. One of these is the challenge mechanic. In some ways reminds me of Paradroid. In that, you know, when you take the challenge, do you go for... Ooh, close. Do you go for 1 or 2 drivers ahead? Can you actually take that driver down? So, you know, you've got to strategically think about it. For example, in this race, you know, I could have gone for one of the other drivers that I was close to in qualifying, but it probably wasn't the best move. You know, it might have been best to just stick against the Lotus. So, building up, this is one I've had quite a bit of fun with, and I'm enjoying going back to it again. You know, ever since I got my hands on it, it just felt good to actually enjoy a good race of it every now and then. You know, this kind of racing game is definitely rather unique. As I said, it's rather unique. I mean, the only other one I can think of is Supercars that did this kind of overhead well. You know, most other games used to just be, you know, the static screen or the third person. I keep coming close on that corner. I hope I don't mess it up. Got 2 more laps, so we're almost there. And I swear that little S-bend there is much tighter than it is in real life. Or should I say, in other simulations. Huh. But that was slower. Well, there we go. Held on to my position. Well, I'm still not doing that well in the championship. At this point, time to load these next set of courses. And we're back. Welcome to France. So let's continue. I thought it'd be worth cutting the load times out, just as while I do use, an original video tape or disk image when I play most of this stuff, sometimes loading is still a bit of a bugbear. I think I always mess that corner up. Ah! I do love the rebound from that crash, as your car splits into multiple little chunks. I'm going to give it a shot, but I don't know if I'll go well. Hopefully I don't mess this race up. Like that. I really should have slowed down in that corner. But this is tense, because you can see he's just off the screen. Yeah, I do apologise for keeping mostly silent at this point. This is probably the hardest track of the game for me, so I really want to try and keep this one and win. The good news is on the last lap now, so that should help, I guess. I always mess that corner up. I feel rubbish for doing so. Close. But we did it. 4 tracks down, 2 more to go. Thankfully we got a much easier one next. Good old Silverstone. And you see, now we have a new car. Thank goodness that didn't end badly. But embarrassing. I reckon on the first corner out. I guess the only downside for model where you've got like 8 or 16 rotation directions is that sometimes the tracks don't quite fit as smoothly as you'd expect. It's not the end of the world. Alright. I'm going to go for the Brabham. Yeah, it's a big part of it really is to use the corners to your advantage, because you can't power them down on the straights. You've got to be just more efficient with cornering to really be able to take the lead against the driver. So in this case, I think I've already lost third place, which is the purple Brabham that I wanted. Oh well. I guess it means more practice. Then you go and spoil it over by doing something weird, like cut the corner too tight. Round. Or go too wide. Oh well. Three out of four. Oh well, we didn't win that time. Well, we didn't beat the opposing driver. Tell you one thing, this game is definitely a good, tough work on the thumbs. Just because of how I've got my stick set up. Ah, I should be fourth. Oh well. And Brazil, the last course. And I guess it's one of those things. I really wish the game had more circuits. But other than that, this is one I really do enjoy. I'm not great at it, and I do think that the way it's designed, in which, you know, you have to basically start the game again and loop through, sort of, to move your team up each time, kind of grates after a while. But other than that, I really do enjoy this game. I do really think it's worth checking out. As I said, it's a bit hard to find commercially. I mean, it took me a long time to hunt this copy down. But if you don't care about that, you know, it's not that hard to find online if that's, you know, if you want to do that. And, you know, I did that while I was hoping to hunt it down. Wowzers, I think that might be the longest course as well. Let's see how we go. I'm going to try and go for the Brabham again. We'll see. It'd be cool to be in that car at the end. But on the other hand, at least if I wanted to continue playing, I would be in a Lotus instead, which isn't too bad. So yeah, you can sort of see the scroll juddering a bit here. Bit of a shame that does happen, but probably the weakest point of the game, really. That the excellent presentation, the loading's not too bad. It's just that little hiccup that sort of knocks a few points off. Oh, I messed that corner up. Yeah, I think I've lost the driver now. Who earns? Three laps too, so which means one more after this. Okay, come around. Oops. Yeah, regretfully, oh, what a way to end the season. Silly mistake like that, and I've just ended the season. So there we go. Season ends. All up, I came 5th in the championship, which isn't the most auspicious of starts. And I'm still in Lotus, which means I at least moved up one team. So we can see here's the results. These, the 3 drivers that won. Oh boy. I don't think I can, the downside of using hardware emulation sometimes. But, so at this point, I'm pretty good. I'm going to just wrap it up here. So as I said, I really do recommend Slicks. I think it's put together really well. It's a great racer. Has little flaws, but they're not really enough to distract. It's put together really well, and I do say it's worth checking out. And that's really a wrap. So thanks again for watching. If you subscribed, thanks for doing that. Do subscribe if you want to see more, as usual, one per week. And of course, I'll have some links to a couple of other good games that you might want to check out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.